Good morning, First Christian Church. We are recording a chat with Mickey and Catherine. We're recording with mask on today because COVID is so crazy, and for Catherine is more, what would be the term?
Immunocompromised.
Immunocompromised. That's a big word for me, and so we want to protect her, of course. But we wanted to tell you that we had a wonderful strategic planning session with the board on Saturday, and I thought Catherine and I would talk a little bit about what we thought about it, what we saw, what we highlighted, and this is not to be an official report. The board should make the official report, but I thought we could get some reaction and it'd give you an idea of what was discussed. So I'll start off with some overall thing. How did you feel about the day?
I felt good. Thankfully, you'd had strategic planning experience, and so I think that helped guide us. We did only have a short time frame, so that was a little bit limiting, but I think everybody had a lot of good thoughts and opinions and just reflections over our congregation, both amidst COVID and just in general. And so I felt really good about it. How about you?
They were really engaged, don't you think? I mean, they really got into it and were really giving their best thoughts, and I just felt really good about the process and how it all went. Catherine was great about taking notes for us, and she has been great. Look at this. She's made a spreadsheet with all the results in it, and we are going through this and trying to kind of collate the information so that we can submit it to the board so they can continue to think about it and as we move forward, because this should affect the way we're going. And we only had 2 hours, and I told the board that if you were doing a real strategic plan, you probably have needed much more time than that. And so we were rushing, but we got a lot done, and I was pleased that we were doing strategic thinking, and I think they came up with a lot of interesting ideas as we went forward. So I want us to look at some of the things. We talked a bit about the purpose, only briefly, but we got down to the part I liked was about analyzing our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And let's talk a little bit about that. They named a number of strengths, so you kind of tell one and then I'll tell one. Which one did you like?
I liked they were talking about us being a welcoming congregation, that people don't feel pressured when they walk through the doors, because you can come and see how things work and you're not necessarily signing on to anything or any particular beliefs, but we're encouraging you to be more thoughtful and learn more and be in conversation and dialogue. And so welcoming and affirming.
And I thought really... it was important that they use the word inclusive, that we welcome everybody and anybody, and that was a good thing. We may struggle still with how exactly we may define that, but I think generally our people are welcoming of people from wherever they come from and whatever stripe kind of person they are, and that's a good thing. So let's see. One of the things they highlighted was our community events. And said that that's certainly a strength. And the other thing I liked that they talked about was how the building is available to the community. We have the walking track, we've got the body recall, we've got a group using the gym for basketball, we've got a group wanting to use the gym for cheerleading, we've got a back group, we've got a Tai Chi group, we've got Alcoholics Anonymous groups, Al-Anon groups. And so our building is a whole ministry center, and it does, that use of the building involves the staff. The staff has to respond to that in a number of ways, but that's a real ministry that our church has. It's very unique, about one of our great strengths. Any other strengths that you want to highlight? I was interested that there was a good bit of discussion about the music, and people were generally happy with the music and the quality of the music. There's always a debate about styles of music, but they felt, and I feel, that we do our particular style of music well, and that's an attraction to a number of people, and they like that, so that was good.
Then the other thing, kind of tying back to our building and community stuff, is just things like Soups on Us and how
That's right.
we're very intentional about looking at the needs of the community and being involved in those ways.
And of course, our church has, I think, amazing outreach activities, and that's certainly one of our strengths. Then we moved on to the weaknesses, and let's talk about one weakness that you may have noticed that they talked about.
I think the one that stuck out was the repetition of volunteers. In that it's really hard when you're using the same people in all of your things, and it's a really straight avenue to burnout, and so we have to be very careful that we're encouraging our volunteers, but also making sure that people know that they can get involved no matter how active they've been. There are lots of opportunities there.
And I think that's a real challenge for every church. They always say that 80% of the things done are done by 20% of the people, the 80-20 rule. And that's generally true, and it is a real process that we want to work at assimilating people who are on the fringes, moving them to be more committed, and then moving them into volunteering to these positions. Another thing I've talked with Julie about is that we need to manage our human resources, in that at some point you say, we can't just keep doing more and more stuff with the same volunteer base. If we want to do more stuff, we got to have more volunteers, and that's something you have to acknowledge. And in strategic planning, it's a matter of resources. Do you have the human resources? Do you have the financial resources? Do you have the physical resources to do whatever you're planning to do? You know, one of the weaknesses that stood out to me is that I noticed that there were at least 3 times people mentioned we have an aging congregation. And I think everybody in our church recognizes that we are aging, and we have a gap of young families and small children, and that has for a long time been a priority of this church, that we've wanted that to happen, and I'm convinced that everybody in the church wants it to happen. We just are not quite sure how to make it happen, and that's kind of the challenge. And in other places we talked about offering more programming aimed at that age group, and that's certainly one of the strategies that we want to do.
Yeah, which tying into that, the idea that we need to market ourselves more, to any of the events that are happening already in our church building, like you said, the use of the building, but also in our community, whether that's at center or on bulletin boards or in a variety of ways, including social media, just utilizing those things more.
In fact, that was like the top priority of strategies, was simply, I like the way they said it, tell our story with authentic promotion. I like that phrase. And they wanted to, and they were even interested and willing to spend money if we have to adequately market ourselves and tell our story. And there's the perception that the community doesn't accurately understand who our church really is.
Yeah.
And so that's a real message that we need to communicate. I like that.
Yeah.
One of the opportunities that they talked about was Center College. And you've actually had some conversations with Center College. I'd like you to share a little bit about what you've done that people don't know about.
Yeah, I visited with their chaplain, and Patty and I also went to their community involvement night at the beginning of the semester, of just whenever the students are coming in and wanting to know what's around in the community. And it was a little difficult in just that we didn't have specific things to give them, like this is what, other than worship, and here are our Sunday school classes, like here's a specific thing that's targeted towards college age students. And so that was a little bit of the problem, but the chaplain had some great ideas about if there are any professors in our congregation or meals opportunities. Those would be really great connections, as well as opportunities for letting them ask a lot of questions about faith and religion. That was another one that came up during that time.
Right. And I think this whole idea of building a relationship with Center College is going to require almost a strategic plan to do that particular thing, because we can't just show up one time and say, hey, y'all come. That's not really much of a plan to reach Center College. And we're going to need to figure out avenues and ways to reach them, and what we can do that will be meaningful to the students and professors, so that we can reach out to them. But it is an opportunity that's out there just sort of waiting for us.
Yeah.
Let's see, I'll let you talk a little bit about threats. What did you notice on what they said about external threats to our church?
Well, the biggest one was COVID, and I think all of us can agree on that, and that it's just difficult, and it has been difficult these past couple of years, just trying to figure out what works, and then we figure out something that works and it all changes, and that's really difficult for everybody in the world. Another one that came up was just the mega churches, and that they're drawing on a different demographic than what we're drawing on, and it's an alternative to the traditional style. And is there a balance to that? Do we just stay in our lane? What does that look like?
And it's interesting that, from a strategic planning view, you have to say that other churches are competing for the same membership. You'd rather think about they're our sister churches and we're all working for God. But there's the whole idea that people do make choices, and we have to acknowledge that fact. And as I always say, the mega churches are doing something right because they have a lot of people going there, and that's a good thing. But we have some different things to offer, and that sort of goes back to the marketing thing. What is it that we offer that is different from not only the mega church but other churches around? And if we can communicate that message, then the people who are really looking for what we offer will come here, and that's certainly what we want to happen. Let's see. So let's talk about the top three. What were the top three goals that came out of the strategic plan? That'd be probably a good final thing for us to do.
As you were saying, the first one was the marketing. Let's see, authentic promotion, telling our story better. The next one was more service projects and groups for service throughout our community, and it was pretty specifically about our local community, not Lexington, focusing a little bit more. And then alternative fellowship opportunities, including potential for a second service or more opportunities for things that are focused on spiritual growth, things like that.
Right, Bible studies, small groups, and they mentioned maybe targeting single adults, divorced people, young families, and youth. And I was interested that the youth were interested in finding more opportunities for their outreach. Maybe that they would have outreach to some needs that elderly members of our church might have, and that kind of thing. So there was a lot of ideas floated around in these couple of hours, and I really thought it was interesting, and I wanted you to know a little bit about what is taking place. And as I said, we're trying to compile these ideas. We will bring them back to the board, and the board will take some actions based on the goals that they set. You got anything else you want to add to this?
I think that's it.
All right, I think we've given you a pretty good view of the strategic plan, and I hope that we will have some concrete actions come out of that. And thank you for watching our chats with Mickey and Catherine.